It took 7 years to build a fortune, and I truly believed I had found a second family. 7 years where I took a tiny, nearly bankrupt family repair shop and transformed it into a leading regional conglomerate manufacturing premium vehicle parts. Yet not once did I dare claim the credit. I handed all the glory to my husband Landon so he could walk tall in the world. I lived in that silent sacrifice until one fateful afternoon. My mother-in-law, Beatrice, whom I had devotedly cared for those 7 years, brought Landon's old college sweetheart back from Italy. Without a word of preamble, she threw a check for $250,000 at me, and next to it divorce papers already signed by Landon. Then she frigidly ordered, "Take the money and get out of this house. This place was never yours." In that instant, I froze. My whole world crumbled beneath my feet. It was a weekend evening. The Charlotte sky, after a summer shower, was unusually cool. I had just returned from the gym carrying a box of croissants, Landon's favorite treat. After 7 years of marriage, I still held on to the habit of personally looking after even his smallest comforts. The custom estate in Myers Park, a wedding gift from my parents, was strangely silent. Usually at this hour, my mother-in-law, Beatrice, would be in the living room watching her favorite cable news program. But today, not a soul was stirring. I set the box of pastries on the sleek walnut coffee table. Sensing something was wrong, the atmosphere in the house was too formal, too quiet. On the table, Beatrice's cherished fine china tea set was already arranged, steam still rising from the kettle, as if awaiting a guest of paramount importance. I was about to head up the grand staircase when the clicking sound of high heels resonated from the foyer. The heavy, solid mahogany front door swung open. My mother-in-law entered, followed by my husband Landon. But the person walking beside him, the one clinging to his arm with such intimacy, was not me. It was another woman. She looked to be my age, dressed in a designer ivory silk jumpsuit from a costly Italian brand. Her chestnut hair fell in voluminous waves, and her carefully applied makeup radiated an aura of effortless sophistication, something I, a woman dedicated solely to my work and family, never aspired to. My heart lurched. I recognized her instantly. Valeria Grant, Landon's first love from Clark, Atlanta, the one who left him years ago to study abroad because her family, at the time, was seen as not quite enough. Why was she here? Why was she clinging to my husband's arm? A million questions swirled in my mind, but before I could utter a single word, Beatrice spoke. Her voice was cold and distant, devoid of the warmth of the mother-in-law I had always respected. "Ah, you're back. Perfect, we were waiting for you." We were. I looked around, perplexed. It was just the three of them. Landon, my husband, the man I loved with my entire being, stood there with his head bowed, not daring to look me in the eye. I let out a laugh, a sound more desolate than any sob. "Do you think my 7 years, my effort, everything I've done for this family is only worth $250,000? Beatrice offered a scornful smile. "Don't be greedy. $250,000 is generous considering you served this family well." "Oh no, excuse me. I forgot." She placed a hand over her mouth, feigning regret. "You couldn't even fulfill the most basic function of a wife. 7 years and not a single child. The Brooks lineage cannot be extinguished." That sentence was like a sledgehammer blow directly to my already shattered heart. It was true. We had no children. It was my greatest pain, my biggest torment. But Landon always claimed it didn't matter, that he only needed me. It turned out everything was a lie. They had used my deepest sorrow as a weapon to humiliate me, to cast me out in the cruelest way possible. I looked at Landon. This time I wasn't pleading for an explanation. I growled, my voice heavy with resentment. "Landon, talk. What does all of this mean? Cat got your tongue?" Only then did Landon slowly lift his head. His eyes were red, not with pity for me but with fear. He stammered, "Serena, I'm sorry. My mother and Valeria are right. We're not compatible. I still love Valeria. I still love Valeria." 7 years of togetherness, of intimacy, all the love and care I had poured out. It turned out I was just a substitute, another woman's shadow. I felt like someone was strangling me. I couldn't breathe. Everything around me started spinning, blurring. I only saw Valeria's triumphant face, Beatrice's glacial stare, and the extreme cowardice of the man I called my husband. I swayed, leaning on the edge of the table to keep from falling. The $250,000 check lay there, a mockery of my stupidity. I had lost. I had lost disastrously in the very marriage I had built with my entire being. I don't recall how long I stood motionless in the middle of that living room. Perhaps it was a few minutes or maybe an eternity. Time seemed to have stopped, leaving only the image of the three of them, a complete family, judging and expelling the superfluous member who was me. The sound of the door closing behind them echoed cruelly, returning me to the harsh reality. The enormous Myers Park estate suddenly felt cold and devastatingly empty. I was alone, completely alone. Slowly, I let myself sink to the floor, resting my back against the soft leather sofa I had personally selected. The check and the divorce petition remained on the table, an indelible humiliation. My tears had stopped falling, not because the pain had ceased, but because I had surpassed the threshold of crying. It transformed into numbness, a glacial chill spreading from my heart throughout my body. I looked around the house. Every corner, every decorative object had been carefully chosen by me. I sourced the abstract, watercolor on the wall from a benefit auction supporting the local community center. It took me a month to find and nurture the jasmine blooming in the corner. This entire house, every brick, every blade of grass was permeated with my sweat, my dedication, and my love. I had built a home, but it turned out I was never its owner. I was only a tenant in my own house, a tenant with a 7-year lease. I began to recall 7 years ago when Landon proposed. What did he say? He said he had nothing but a sincere heart and a failing family repair shop. He said he didn't deserve a city girl from a good family. But I ignored all of it. I told him, I don't need material possessions. I only need your love. We'll rebuild everything together from scratch. And I delivered. I resigned from my position as head of investment strategy at a major fund, a job that paid 6 figures. I rolled up my sleeves and threw myself into revitalizing that old shop with him. I used all my knowledge, my experience, and my network. I spent countless nights drafting proposals, securing financing, and negotiating with partners. I remember once, to seal a crucial deal with a group of venture capitalists from Austin, I had to drink an entire bottle of high-proof bourbon by myself, ending up in the emergency room. When I woke up, the first person I saw was Landon. He held my hand. His eyes red and said, I owe you my whole life. In that moment, I thought all my sacrifices were worthwhile. From a small shop under my direction was born the Brooks Group, a benchmark name in the auxiliary vehicle components industry, with annual profits in the tens of millions of dollars. But I never stepped into the spotlight. In every press conference, at every signing ceremony, the representative was always Landon. I remained in the shadows as the quiet wife and consultant. I wanted him to be a successful man, admired by all. I naively believed his success was my success, that his happiness was my happiness. I kept nothing for myself. All profits, all dividends, I put in his name for him to manage. I trusted him blindly. I thought we were husband and wife, a single entity with no need for divisions. How wrong I was. To them, I was just a tool, a money-making machine. And when that machine had fulfilled its function, when it had generated enough profits, they were ready to discard it without the slightest remorse, to replace it with a newer, prettier version from a better family. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Landon. I stared at the name flashing on the screen, feeling a wave of disgust. I didn't answer. He called again and again. Finally, he sent a text. Serena, I'm downstairs. Can you let me come up for a minute, please? I let out a bitter laugh. He still had the nerve to return, but then I reconsidered. I needed to hear it, to hear how he would continue his charade. I opened the door. Landon entered, now without the cowardly, downcast appearance of the afternoon. He looked somewhat haggard, his shirt wrinkled. He stopped in front of me, his voice. Serena, I'm sorry. I know, but I can explain. Explain? I repeated with a frigid voice. How do you plan to explain it? That for 7 years, you only saw me as a tool, or that you still loved your ex and were just waiting for the day to bring her back? No, Valeria, he denied hastily. It was my mother. It was all her idea. Valeria had just returned and my mother went to find her. She said our family was different now that we were finally on par with Valeria's family. She said I had a responsibility to my first love. She pressured me. I had no choice. My mother again to the very end. He was still a big kid, incapable of taking responsibility for his actions, always hiding behind his mother's skirt. And the divorce petition? I asked, did she force you to sign that too? She pressured me. He stammered. She said if I didn't sign, she would disinherit me. Serena, please understand me. It was a moment of weakness. Give me a chance. Let's start over. I'll talk to my mother. He approached, trying to take my hand, but I recoiled a step, looking at him with absolute disdain. Landon, aren't you disgusted with yourself? A chance? You threw that chance away yourself. Now please get out of my house. This house is a gift from my parents. It has nothing to do with your family. Landon's face went pale. He looked at me, his expression no longer one of regret, but of anger. Serena, don't push it. I've already humiliated myself by begging your forgiveness. Don't forget that the Brooks Group is still in my name. If you make things difficult, you won't come out ahead either. Are you threatening me? I burst into laughter. Perfect. Then I'll see you in court. Let's see whose side the law takes, the traitors or the deceived. Hearing the word court, Landon seemed to lose his nerve. He knew that if everything came to light, the reputation it had cost him so much to build would collapse. He said nothing more. He simply turned around in silence and walked out the door. The sound of the door closing echoed once more in the darkness. But this time I didn't feel cold. I felt a fire burning in my chest. The fire of hatred and determination. They wanted war. I would give them a war. A war in which I would no longer be the docile lamb. But I didn't know that very night another secret, an even greater conspiracy that his family had prepared, waiting for me to fall into the trap, was about to reveal itself. After Landon left, I sat alone in the desolate estate until late into the night. I no longer cried or felt sharp pain. The numbness had passed, giving way to chilling clarity. 7 years of marriage, 7 years of sacrifice. It had all been a sham. I had deceived myself for too long, living in a rose-colored bubble created by me and that traitor. Now the bubble had burst, returning me to a harsh and ruthless reality. I knew I couldn't stay here for another second. Everything in this house reminded me of false memories. It was suffocating me. I went upstairs and opened the suitcase Beatrice had kindly packed. Inside, indeed, were only a few of my everyday clothes. The cheapest, the oldest ones. The designer dresses, the expensive handbags I had bought with my own money. Everything was gone. They didn't just want to kick me out. They wanted to strip me of every single possession. An ironic smile played on my lips. Fine, I didn't need those things. I would leave empty-handed just as they wanted, but I wouldn't leave in silence. I dragged the empty suitcase out of the house. Without looking back, even once, I hailed a cab. The only destination that came to mind was my mother's home. My mother's apartment was in a historic central district of Charlotte. It wasn't luxurious, but it was always warm and orderly. My mother, Evelyn, was a retired university lecturer, a kind woman, but incredibly astute and strong. I had likely inherited much of my strong character from her. When I arrived at her door with the suitcase at 1 o'clock in the morning, she didn't seem surprised. She simply opened it in silence, ushered me in, and closed the door. She didn't ask questions. She didn't console me. She went to the kitchen and made me a cup of hot chamomile tea. "Drink this so you can warm up," she said in a quiet voice. "Then shower and change. We'll talk about everything tomorrow morning." My mother's calm presence made me, who was tense as a fiddle string, relax. I did as she said. After the shower, in my old pajamas, I felt like a child returning home after a long journey, finding the safest refuge. I slept soundly that night without dreams. Perhaps I was too exhausted. The next morning, when I woke up, my mother had already prepared breakfast. The aroma of homemade shrimp and grits filled the apartment. Seeing the steaming bowl in front of me, I felt a lump in my throat. How long had it been since I'd eaten a breakfast made by my mother? How long had I been absorbed in work, in caring for that false family, forgetting that there was a mother here who always waited for me in silence? "Eat, honey, eat, and then tell me everything," she said, serving me more sausage. While I ate, I told her everything, trying to stay calm, but my voice trembled. I told her about Valeria, the $250,000 check, the divorce petition, Beatrice's cruel words, and Landon's cowardice. I expected my mother to get angry, to cry, to curse the Brooks family, but she didn't. She just listened in silence, her eyes growing deeper and sharper. When I finished, she slowly put down her utensils. She didn't dry my tears. She looked at me directly and asked a question that seemed utterly unrelated. "Serena, do you remember when you were little? You loved playing chess. In the last game you played with your father. What did he teach you?" I froze. The memories returned. Dad said, "When you are cornered, never think about sacrificing a piece uselessly. Stay calm. Look for the opponent's weak spot and turn your own disadvantageous position into a trap." Exactly. My mother nodded. "Right now, you're in a game like that. They've put you in check, but that doesn't mean you've lost." My mother began to analyze every word, clear, logical, and forceful, like a strategist, not a retired elderly professor. First, why did they give you $250,000? It's not a small amount. If they only wanted to kick you out, they could have used much less. That figure has a purpose. It's large enough for a normal person to feel compensated and sign quietly. It's also a figure that they believe someone who created a fortune of hundreds of millions will despise. They are playing with your psychology. They want you to let it go out of pride, out of disdain. I began to understand. Second, why did they do everything so openly and brazenly? They aren't afraid of you causing a scene. No, they aren't afraid. On the contrary, they expect you to. The more jealous and out of control you appear, the more you will look like an abandoned wife desperately trying to hold on. Then public opinion will side with them. They will invent a story of a husband who, for true love, had the courage to leave a wife who couldn't give him children. They will become the victims. Every word my mother spoke was like a hammer breaking the chaos in my head. Everything began to make sense. "So, what should I do now, Mama?" I asked. My voice was no longer weak. My mother smiled, a smile full of mystery and power. "Now you are going to do exactly what they want, but in our way. You are going back to that house." "Go back?" I was surprised. "Yes, you will go back, not as an expelled wife, but as a heartbroken wife who is considering their offer. You will show yourself to be devastated, pitiful, but under no circumstances are you to sign the divorce petition yet. You have to buy time." "What for?" "To let them drop their guard, and for us to have time to gather evidence," my mother said, her eyes gleaming with a sharp light. "They think they are playing chess with a lamb. We will show them who they are dealing with. Serena, I don't want you to seek revenge. I want you to claim justice. You will not only reclaim your assets, you will reclaim your honor. You will make them pay for every single one of your tears. I will be behind you, moving the pieces with you one by one." I looked at my mother. An intense emotion overcame me. I was no longer afraid. I had my mother by my side. I had the cunning and experience of a woman who had weathered storms guiding me. I stood up and collected the dishes. "Understood, Mama. I will act in this play, and it will be the performance of my life." My mother nodded, satisfied. The chessboard had been reconfigured, and this time the one moving the white pieces, the one making the first move, would be me. But neither my mother nor I could imagine that the conspiracies we were about to face were much more complex and darker than we could conceive. The next morning I called Landon. I purposely let my voice sound why-you and full of doubt. "Hello, Landon. It's me. There was silence for a few seconds on the other end. He probably hadn't expected me to call. Serena, where are you? Are you all right? His voice still carried that feigned concern. I am at my mother's house. I have been thinking all night. I don't know what to do. Everything has been so sudden. I started acting. I controlled every little sniffle perfectly. I could hear his sigh of relief. Serena, don't cry anymore. I know you're in shock. It hurts me too. How about you come back home? We can sit down and talk quietly. No matter what happens, this is still your house. My house. I laughed bitterly inside, but my voice remained a choked sob. It's still my house. It's not what you think. Come back and I'll explain everything to you. I'm waiting for you at home, he said with a tone full of feigned longing. All right, I replied after a feigned pause. I'll come back. I hung up. My mother, sitting across from me, nodded with satisfaction. Very good. The fish is starting to drop its guard. Remember, from now on, you must become the most pitiful, most defenseless wife. The more they underestimate you, the easier it will be for them to make mistakes. I took a deep breath. The play had officially begun. I returned to the Myers Park estate at noon. I didn't drive my Audi SUV. I took a cab, nor did I wear elegant clothes. I chose an old, discreetly colored dress and went, without makeup to show my swollen eyes and tired appearance. When I entered, Landon was already waiting in the living room. He rushed to take my handbag with a gesture as attentive as if nothing had happened. You're back. You must be exhausted, right? Go upstairs and rest. I said nothing, just followed him silently up the stairs. Our bedroom was the same. Nothing had changed. But I knew that in a few days it would likely have a new owner. Serena, Landon said, sitting beside me on the bed and taking my hand. I know I'm at fault, but my thing with Valeria was actually an arrangement made by my mother. She wants an heir and you? I truly didn't have another option. He started again with his usual refrain of blaming others. I truly love you, but I also can't disobey my mother. How about you accept the money? Consider it a guarantee for your future. When things calm down, I promise I'll find a way to compensate you. He acted wonderfully. The obedient son trapped between his mother and his wife, the man heartbroken at being unable to protect his love. But I knew it was all lies. He just wanted me to sign the petition quickly so he could legitimately unite with his mistress and her enormous family fortune. I need time to think, I said in a weak voice, turning away to pretend to cry. Of course. Rest. I won't bother you anymore, he said and quietly left the room. As soon as the door closed, I jumped up. The tears disappeared, replaced by a cold, sharp gaze. I had to act immediately. I knew his study downstairs was where he kept all the important documents, but I couldn't enter openly. I needed an excuse. I waited until nightfall. When Landon entered, I was already sitting on the sofa, pretending to be absorbed in the television. I had obtained the first evidence, a compelling proof. My acting now had a new purpose. I would not only reclaim what was mine, I would destroy that Project Silver Harbor, shatter their dreams, and make them pay for their limitless greed. But I also knew I wouldn't be enough alone. I needed more allies, and I knew where to find that person. The next day, under the pretense that I wanted to go to an historic Baptist church to find peace of mind, Landon agreed without suspecting anything. He even gave me some cash, saying it was for the offering plate. I took his money, feeling ridiculous inside. I was using my own money to do myself a favor. But I didn't go to church. I drove directly to an address in the financial district. It was a small but prestigious law firm specializing in corporate fraud cases. The person I needed to see was Marcus Reed, an old friend from Spelman College, a man of integrity and extreme intelligence. Marcus had tried to date me, but after I chose Landon, we maintained a good friendship. I knew that in these circumstances, he was the only person I could trust. When I entered, Marcus was working. Seeing me, he was slightly surprised, but quickly invited me into his office. Long time no see, Serena. You don't look too well, he said with a look full of concern. I didn't beat around the bush. I placed the photos I had taken of the Project Silver Harbor plan on his desk. Marcus, I need your help. I told him the whole story. From the sham bankruptcy, the Brooks family's conspiracy to the business plan I had just found. Marcus listened, his face growing more serious with every word. He took each photo, examining every detail meticulously. Unbelievable, he exclaimed when I finished. They are too cruel and twisted. Serena, you've been incredibly brave to face this alone. I'm not alone, I said firmly. I have you. Marcus looked at me. His eyes conveyed confidence and determination. All right, I'll help you. The first thing we need to do is stop this conspiracy, but we need more proof to demonstrate their intent to appropriate your assets. These photos are important, but they're not solid enough to accuse them in court. Then what do we do? I asked. Marcus pondered for a moment. I need you to keep acting. Make them believe you've almost accepted your fate, but that you still have sentimental doubts. Suggest to Landon that he transfer a small portion of your assets into his name first as a proof of his love, so you feel secure signing the divorce. If he takes the bait, it will be irrefutable proof of fraud and misappropriation. Marcus's plan was audacious, but also very dangerous. It required exceptional acting skills and nerves of steel. Can you do it? He asked with concern in his eyes. I nodded. As I left the law firm, I felt stronger. I was no longer alone in this battle. That night, I began to execute the plan. I prepared a sumptuous dinner, Landon's favorite dishes. I also opened the bottle of vintage Merlot he had gifted me on our first wedding anniversary. Landon arrived home and was very surprised. Is today a special day? I smiled sadly. I just thought we should have one last perfect dinner. I've thought it over carefully. Perhaps your mother and Valeria are right. I can't make you happy. I'll sign the petition. I clearly saw a flash of joy in Landon's eyes, but he quickly concealed it, replacing it with an expression of pain. Serena, don't say that. Don't say anything. I interrupted him. I just have one final condition. What condition? Tell me. I'll do anything, he responded hastily. I poured him a glass of wine, my gaze lost in the distance. I know $250,000 is a lot of money, but I don't need it. I just want something that proves that your love for me was real for 7 years. I want you to accept this beachfront condo. It is my separate property. It has nothing to do with the company. I want to transfer it to you as the last gift I can give you. When you live here, you will always remember me. Landon was paralyzed. He looked at me as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. His reaction was completely unexpected. He didn't greedily accept. He shook his head. No, I can't accept it. It's your house, your effort. I can't. Why not? I asked, my voice cracking. Do you despise it, or is it that because you never truly loved me, you don't want anything from me? It's not that, he said, confused. It's just too much. I got up and went to the window, turning my back to him. I understand. You don't need to say anything else. Tomorrow, I'll sign the petition and leave. Wait, Serena. He rushed to embrace me from behind. Don't go. I accept. I'll accept it. I'll accept it to prove to you that my love for you is real. I rested my head on his shoulder. A cold, triumphant smile appeared on my lips, invisible to him. The fish had taken the bait, and this time he had swallowed the hook, line, and sinker. The next day, Landon and I went to the notary together. I had prepared a false deed of gift for the condo, carelessly drafted, purposely leaving legal loopholes that a normal person would hardly notice. Just as Marcus had instructed, I focused on displaying the pain and reluctance of a wife about to leave her husband. Landon, blinded by greed, suspected nothing. He quickly signed all the papers. The moment he stamped his signature, I knew I had the decisive evidence, the proof of his greed and his deception. But I didn't know that at that very moment elsewhere my mother was executing an even more masterful move. A move that would leave the entire Brooks family speechless. while I flawlessly executed my pretense of gifting the condo. On another front, my mother had sprung into action. She didn't choose direct confrontation. She knew that to take down a family that valued appearances as much as the Brooks, one had to attack precisely that, their reputation. My mother contacted an old friend, a veteran journalist with great influence in the media. She didn't tell him my story pitifully. She simply casually leaked some rumors that the young heir of the Brooks Group, famous for adoring his wife, was preparing to divorce and marry his high society ex-girlfriend. She hinted that this divorce could be a financial bomb linked to conspiracies of asset appropriation worth millions. That's all she said, nothing more. With the shrewdness of a journalist, my mother's friend knew he had an informational goldmine. A first article was published using only initials, but with such coinciding details that the entire Charlotte business world understood who it was about. The article was like a stone thrown into a compound. The Brooks family, who were gloating, thinking they had deceived me, suddenly became the center of all gossip. The phones of Beatrice and her husband wouldn't stop ringing. Business partners, high society friends, everyone called curious and wary. The reputation of a respectable and successful family that they had worked so hard to build was in jeopardy. They began to panic. And in their panic, they made a fatal mistake. They pushed Valeria into the spotlight. They thought that by officially publicizing the relationship between Landon and Valeria, they could silence the rumors, transforming the story from one of infidelity and husband stealing into a romantic tale of rediscovered love. Valeria, with Beatrice's support, began appearing frequently alongside Landon. She moved into the Myers Park estate, the house I had left. She started changing everything, the drapes, the artwork, even the herb garden. I loved so much. She wanted to erase any trace of me to affirm her position as the new lady of the house. And then her psychological war against me began. She didn't call me. She didn't send insulting messages. She chose a much more subtle and cruel method. She started publishing photos of her happy life on social media, deliberately in public mode. One day, a photo of her sitting in my former office, her hand resting on the laptop I used, with the caption, "Familiarizing myself with my future husband's work." The next day, a photo of her and Landon having a candlelit dinner in our dining room with the caption, "Happiness is simply being with the person you love." The climax was when she posted a photo of a massive sapphire ring on her ring finger next to Landon's hand holding hers. The text simply read, "Yes, I do." Every photo, every post was like a knife twisting in my wound. She wanted to provoke me, to make me jealous, to lose control. She wanted me to cause a scene so she could play the victim. The poor woman harassed by her beloved's jealous ex-wife. I read every post, looked at every photo, feeling waves of anger. But I did nothing. I didn't comment. I didn't respond. I simply took screenshots of everything. They would be evidence of her true face, a brazen and manipulative third party. My silence seemed to infuriate Valeria even more. She decided to strike harder. One afternoon while I was at my mother's apartment, the doorbell rang. The aide opened it and rushed back in, alarmed. "Ma'am, Miss Valeria. Miss Valeria and Mrs. Beatrice are outside." My mother and I looked at each other. What were they doing here? We went out to the living room. Beatrice and Valeria had already entered on their own and were sitting comfortably on the sofa as if they owned the place. "Serena, you still haven't signed," Beatrice began in her condescending tone. "I gave you a week to think. Don't you dare retract. I believe this matter should be settled by a judge," I replied calmly. Valeria spoke up, her voice sweet but full of provocation. "Serena, I know you still care for Landon, but you should accept reality. He no longer loves you. The one he has chosen is me. The more you cling on, the more pathetic you'll appear." She stood up, walked around the living room, stroking my mother's antiques. "I hear this apartment is also inherited from your mother. How lucky you are. You've lost a husband, but you still have a place to return to. How about this?" She stopped and stared at me. Accept the $250,000, and with this apartment, you'll have enough to live comfortably for the rest of your life. You should be a little more reasonable." "Reasonable?" My mother, who had been silent, suddenly spoke. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was laden with authority. "Miss," my mother said, "do you know whose house you are in? Who are you talking to? By what right do you tell my daughter to be reasonable?" Valeria was slightly disconcerted by my mother's presence, but then she smiled with disdain. "Ma'am, I was just giving sincere advice. Times have changed. The one who adapts survives. I think you should advise Serena to accept reality so that everything can be resolved amicably. Thank you for your advice." My mother smiled, a glacial smile. Before leaving, Valeria turned, shooting me a look full of hatred and a threat. "You'll see. You'll regret this." When the door closed, I let out a sigh of relief, but my mother looked at me seriously. "Serena, that girl is not simple. If she and your mother-in-law dared to come here to provoke, it's because they have an ace up their sleeve that we don't know about yet." My mother's words startled me. It was true. Valeria's confidence wasn't unfounded. What was the secret they were hiding? A secret that made them believe they had victory assured. The confrontation at my mother's house was a wake-up call. Valeria's brazenness and confidence must stem from an ace up their sleeve that I couldn't yet anticipate. I couldn't rest easy. My mother's warning haunted me. They have an ace up their sleeve that we don't know about yet. I racked my brain, reviewing all possibilities. They already had a plan to seize my personal assets. As for the Brooks Group, Landon was still legally the representative. So what was their ace? It had to be something powerful enough to make them believe that no matter how hard I fought, I would ultimately lose. I decided I needed to seek the answer in the place where I myself had created it, the Brooks Group. Although I had retreated to the background, I still had access to the company's internal system as the chief strategic consultant, a position Landon had granted me so I could continue helping him. I returned to my former office at the company headquarters. The place had been completely emptied with no trace of me. In its place were new decorative objects with Valeria's unmistakable style. She was clearly preparing to occupy that position. I sat down at the computer and logged in. Everything seemed normal, but I knew the most important things would never be in plain sight. I began to review all contracts and financial transactions from the last 6 months, the period since Valeria's return. I searched for any anomaly, any name or company related to Valeria's family or contacts. After hours of fruitless searching, I was about to give up. Perhaps I was being paranoid. Just as I was about to turn off the computer, an old email in the trash folder caught my attention. The sender was an unknown address, and the subject was just a series of numbers. I was about to delete it, but a gut feeling prompted me to open it. There was no text inside, only an encrypted attachment. I frowned. It was a type of high-security email only used in the international finance sector. Why was it here? I used my specialized software to decrypt the file. The process took almost an hour. When the file opened, a contract appeared, and upon reading the first lines, I felt the blood drain from my face. It was a technology and brand transfer agreement between the Brooks Group and a company called Apex Ventures based in Geneva, Switzerland. According to the contract, the Brooks Group agreed to transfer all its intellectual property, key technology patents, and the Brooks brand to Apex Ventures. In exchange, the Brooks Group would become a subsidiary solely responsible for production and would have to pay Apex Ventures a huge annual royalty fee. The person signing on behalf of the Brooks Group was none other than Landon, and the date of the signing was 1 month ago, right after Valeria's return. My whole body trembled. I understood that was their ace up their sleeve. They didn't need to seize the company directly. They had used a much more sophisticated tactic. They had gutted the company, turning the Brooks Group, the golden goose, into an empty shell. All the core value, what it had cost me so much to build, had been legally transferred overseas. If I won the lawsuit and recovered control of the company, the only thing I would obtain would be a simple assembly factory obligated to work to pay royalties for its own technology. Meanwhile, they would sit comfortably in Switzerland, enjoying all the profits of Apex Ventures. Apex Ventures. That name sounded familiar. I quickly searched for information about the company. The results stunned me once more. Apex Ventures had been founded 3 months ago, and its chairman of the board was Valeria's father, Governor Harlan Grant, a known magnate and political power broker. This conspiracy didn't just involve Landon, Valeria, and Beatrice. It had the backing of a powerful financial force. They had set a perfect trap. They had calculated every move. They had turned me, the founder, into an employee in my own venture. The anger and sense of betrayal reached their peak. But I didn't break down. On the contrary, in that moment of darkness, an even bolder idea, an even greater secret that only I knew shone in my mind. They believed they had seized the heart of the Brooks Group. They were wrong. They only had the shell. Because the true heart, its soul, I had guarded in a place no one could imagine. Years ago, when the Brooks Group began developing its key technologies, I foresaw future risks. With Marcus's help and some international financial experts, I had secretly founded another holding company also based in Switzerland called Novacor. All the most important patents, the technologies that gave the Brooks Group its absolute competitive edge, were not registered in the Brooks Group's name. They were registered in Novacor's name. And I, Serena Ellis, was the sole owner of that company. The Brooks Group was only the authorized entity to use those technologies through an internal licensing agreement that only I and a few trusted confidants knew about. Landon, despite being the CEO, never had access to those documents. He only knew that the Brooks Group possessed those technologies, but not that they legally didn't belong to the company. They thought they had gutted the Brooks Group, but in reality what they transferred to Apex Ventures were only secondary technologies, patents about to expire, and most importantly, a limited duration technology use agreement with Novacor. That contract would expire in 2 months. Sitting in front of the computer, a cold smile appeared on my lips. This play was getting more interesting. They had played their ace. Now it was my turn to reveal mine. I would not only recover what was mine, I would make Apex Ventures, the entire Grant family, pay a very high price for daring to confront me. This battle was no longer a simple divorce. It had become a true corporate war. And on this battlefield, I was the one who possessed the ultimate weapon. After discovering the conspiracy and my true ace up my sleeve, I knew it was time to accelerate the game. I needed to create a shock of chaos to force them to make more mistakes and fall into my trap. The plan for the false bankruptcy my mother had devised now became the perfect move, but on a much larger scale. I called an emergency meeting with my confidants at the Brooks Group, the head of manufacturing, the CFO, and the sales director. They were people who had followed me from the beginning. I didn't hide anything from them. I placed the contract with Apex Ventures on the table. The Brooks Group has been sold, I said calmly, but with weight. And the one who sold us is the CEO, Landon. The room fell silent. The shock and indignation were evident. I presented my plan. We are going to create a fictitious crisis, a bankruptcy charade. The sales department will leak the possible cancellation of major contracts. Production will slow down the pace, and accounting will present an internal report showing significant losses. The goal? The sales director asked. To create panic, I replied. When the rumor of bankruptcy spreads, the shares will plummet. Investors will sell. The banks and partners will pressure Apex Ventures, the new owners. We will see how they handle this disaster. They all understood the risk, but seeing my determination, they joined in. We'll do as you say, Serena. The play began. Rumors about the Brooks Group's financial difficulties spread. The shares began to fall. Meanwhile, I returned to my role as the heartbroken wife. I called Landon crying, telling him the company had serious problems. He, gloating in his supposed success, barely consoled me. Relax, everything will be fine, he said indifferently. His apathy gave me the perfect excuse to act desperately. I started contacting financial vultures. In reality, my mother's friends who were collaborating in the charade to sell my stake in the Brooks Group at a bargain price. The news that Serena, the co-founder, was selling to vultures was the final bomb. It confirmed all the rumors. The shares didn't just fall, they plummeted. Investors panicked. Banks demanded explanations from the Brooks Group and Apex Ventures. Landon's family and Valeria didn't see it coming. They went from the peak of triumph to the depths of chaos. They had just bought a multi-million-dollar company that now risked becoming worthless. Landon's phone must have been burning up. The pressure from his father-in-law, the banks, the shareholders. What would he do? He would come back to me, but this time not as a benefactor, but as someone who needed help. And that would be the moment my second trap would close. But I never imagined that in their panic, they would make a request even more brazen and cruel than I had anticipated. The storm I created was more devastating than expected. In 3 days, the value of the Brooks Group had evaporated by more than 60%. My phone also started ringing nonstop. The first to call was Beatrice. Her voice was no longer haughty, but trembling. "Serena, what in God's name are you doing? The company is in ruins." "Oh, really?" I replied with innocence. "I don't understand anything either. I just know we owe a lot of money. Maybe we're going bankrupt." "I'm so scared. Bankrupt it can't be." She screamed. "You have to do something. You're the smart one." I laughed inside. "I can't do anything anymore, Mama. I've tried everything." And I hung up. Then Landon called, furious. "Serena, what did you do? Why did you sell the shares without consulting me?" I was afraid. I returned to my victim role. "I heard the company was going bankrupt and I wanted to recover some money." "I'm sorry. Some money? Your action has sunk everything?" He yelled. "The banks are demanding payment. Partners are canceling contracts. Governor Grant is furious. It's all your fault." How ironic. But I kept acting. "So, what do we do now, Landon?" "I don't know." There was a silence. Then he lowered his tone. "Well, it's done. There's still one last option, which is, my father-in-law and I have talked to save the company. We need a major capital injection. And the only person who can help us now is your mother." There it was. Their true objective. They didn't just want my company. They wanted every last cent of my mother's money. Their greed knew no bounds. "No, Landon. I can't." I refused. "I've already disappointed my mother once." "You have to do it," he interrupted, pleading. "It's not just about saving the company. It's about saving me, our future. Tell your mother it's just a loan. When we get through this, I'll return it with interest. I'll kneel before her if necessary. We need at least $10 million. $10 million? I had to suppress a burst of laughter, turning it into a sob. "Where is my mother going to get that much money?" "She has it," he affirmed. "I know she has real estate and stock market investments. She can get it. Serena, I beg you just this once." After much struggle and persuasion, I reluctantly agreed to talk to my mother. The meeting was set for the next day at my mother's house. Not only would Landon come, but also Valeria's father, Governor Harlan Grant. They wanted to exert maximum pressure. I knew it would be the final act. The act in which all the masks would fall, and I, the prey they were hunting, would be the one to close the trap over their heads. But I knew that facing an old fox like Governor Grant would not be easy. Would my mother and I have the strength to do it? That afternoon, the atmosphere in my mother's house was tense. In the living room, we sat face to face. My mother and I, calm Landon, and Governor Grant, Valeria's father. Governor Grant was a man in his 50s, corpulent, with an affable face, but cold, calculating eyes. He was the conductor of this entire orchestra. "Mrs. Evelyn," Governor Grant began without preamble. "I believe you already know the situation of the Brooks Group. A shame. A company with potential, but poorly managed." He gave me a meaningful look. "My daughter Valeria and Landon have an excellent plan to refloat it, but we need financial support." Financial support. My mother arched an eyebrow. Simple. Governor Grant smiled. "You invest $10 million in the Brooks Group. In exchange, Apex Ventures will cede you a 10% stake. It's a bargain. My mother let out a soft laugh, but it was charged with irony. Governor Grant, are you joking? You want me to invest $10 million in cash in exchange for 10% of a bankrupt company? A company that your own daughter has gutted of all its value? Do you take me for a fool? Governor Grant's face changed. He didn't expect my mother to know so much. Landon paled beside him. Ma'am, I don't know what you are referring to. Governor. Grant tried to maintain his composure. Oh no. My mother poured herself a glass of water. You don't know that you tricked my son-in-law into signing the technology transfer without his knowledge. You don't know that you allied with the CFO to leak confidential information. Her sharp gaze returned. Your little games can deceive the naive Governor Grant, but not me. I have 10 million and much more, but I will not give a single cent to save your empty company. Anger overcame Governor Grant. Mrs. Evelyn, it seems you prefer to do things the hard way. Remember that your daughter is still legally married to Landon. If we declare bankruptcy as his wife, she will also have to assume part of the debt, and her reputation will be destroyed. Are you threatening me? My mother smiled coldly. Perfect. Then let's speak the language of the law. Serena, show them. I took a folder from my handbag. It wasn't the fake contract I made Landon sign. It was something Marcus and my mother had prepared in secret. A prenuptial asset liquidation agreement. Landon and Governor Grant read it. Their faces turned white. The agreement detailed all the evidence I possessed. Recordings, bank statements of fund diversion, the Project Silver Harbor plan. At the end, there was a humanitarian proposal. I would not file criminal charges if Landon voluntarily transferred all his now worthless shares in the community property to me and accepted the divorce without any compensation. You set a trap for me. Landon stammered, pointing at me. A trap, Landon. I stood up. The one who set a trap was you, your mistress, and your entire family for 7 years. Today, I am only giving you a way out. Sign and you will lose your assets, but keep your freedom. If not, I looked him in the eyes. Tomorrow morning, all of this will be in the hands of the police and the press, and then you will lose everything. The air became thick. Governor Grant knew he had lost. They had underestimated us. Landon collapsed into the chair. The blood drained from his face. His only way out was to sign that life or death agreement I myself had drafted. But his final decision was not to sign. He chose a different path, a crazy and desperate one, a path that almost dragged us both into the abyss. Cornered, Landon did not sign. He did something unexpected. He knelt. He knelt before my mother and me, crying profusely. Serena, Mama, I was wrong. I know. I was an idiot, a wretch. Greed blinded me. Please forgive me. I promise I will break up with Valeria. I will start over and dedicate the rest of my life to compensating you. He crawled forward to grab my legs. Serena, do you remember how happy we were? Give me one last chance. It was a perfect performance. The repentant husband. Governor Grant quickly joined in. That's right, Mrs. Evelyn. We must forgive those who return repentant. They were trying to play the compassion card, hoping my heart would soften, but they were mistaken. My heart was stone. Get up, Landon, I said. My voice was glacial. Your tears are no longer worth anything. Stop acting. I give you 24 hours. Tomorrow morning, if I don't have the signed agreement, my lawyer will act. Goodbye. My mother and I turned and went upstairs, leaving them behind. But it was not the end. Desperation can turn a man into a beast. That night, a noise woke me up. I went downstairs, and the scene terrified me. Landon had returned. He had broken in. In his hand, he held a knife. His face was disfigured by rage. Serena, you think you can destroy me that easily? I won't sign. If I go down, you're coming with me. He lunged at me. I screamed. Luckily, my mother had anticipated the worst and had installed a panic alarm. The siren blared. The security guards arrived in minutes and subdued Landon before he could hurt me. That was the point of no return. His attempted assault turned it into a criminal case. He was arrested that very night. The war was no longer in the courts. It was a fight for survival. Thanks to his madness, everything was resolved quickly. Faced with the prospect of jail, Landone's family and Governor Grant had no choice but to accept all my conditions. The divorce was signed. I recovered everything, but the price was a deep emotional scar. To celebrate, my mother organized a party, but not just any party. A stage where justice would be honored and the traitors would receive their final judgment, that of society. We rented the most luxurious ballroom at the Ritz-Carlton. We sent invitations to the entire business world, partners, friends, and the press. The invitation read, "Appreciation Party and Announcement of a New Project by Serena Ellis." That night, I wore a dazzling emerald gown. I went up to the stage and instead of a speech, I projected a video, a summary of my tragic comedy. Happy images with Landon followed by the evidence of his betrayal, the conspiracy, and ending with the images of his arrest at my mother's house. The room fell silent. When the video ended, I took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, the play is over. Thank you for bearing witness to the truth. And now I'm pleased to announce my new project." On the screen appeared the logo of the Azalea Foundation, a non-profit organization to legally and financially support women in difficult marital and business situations. I want to turn my pain into strength so that no other woman has to go through what I did. The applause thundered. They were applauding not just a project, but the resilience of a woman who had risen from her ashes. On that stage, I knew a new chapter of my life had begun. A chapter without shadows of deceit, only with the light of freedom and a new mission. The party at the Ritz-Carlton was a public trial. Forgiveness takes time. I never heard from Landon again. He was part of a closed past. Life had taught me a lesson about trust and self-worth. Marcus and I grew closer. He had supported me through everything, not just as a lawyer, but as a friend. Our relationship slowly blossomed, built on sincerity and mutual respect. 1 year later, on a beach in Nantucket, he proposed to me with a ring woven from seagrass. "I don't promise you more wealth than you already have," he said. "Only honest love and a shoulder to lean on." I cried tears of happiness and said, "Yes." Our wedding was simple. Surrounded by our loved ones, the Azalea Foundation grew under our direction. We adopted 2 children from a local foster center. I've learned that the best revenge is not destroying your enemies, but living a full and happy life that they can never reach. Today, in the garden of our new home, watching Marcus play with our children, I feel a complete peace. I was reborn from the ashes of a false marriage to become an azalea, strong, resilient, and fragrant. The new light of a happy life had finally arrived. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story.